When you have to shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another Trap House podcast. We got a good one here for you today. Charlie and I are going to sit down, talk about our most recent trip to Arkansas, and address some questions that people have sent in, and kind of, chit chat about what's going on here currently. But before we do that, we got to give it up to the sponsors. We have WeebyKnives.com. Check out their knives. They got quite a bit going on their website. It's real easy to navigate there. They got fleshing knives, skinning knives, pocket knives, whatever you need they got a nice fillet knife that's newer. So yeah, check out their website, weebyknives.com. We also have Top Lot Stretcher Company with us. That's toplotstretcherco.com. And we rant and rave a lot about their adjustable stretchers. They also have trapping supplies, DVDs, all that good stuff too as well. So check out their website. And also J3 Outdoors, maker of the Hags Bracket. Check out their website at j3o.com. They also have the Trapline Coffee Company going, so you can grab a cup of brew before you head to the trap line. Start your day off right. TraplineCoffee.com. All right, welcome back to another Trap House podcast. We just got back from Arkansas, so we're going to kind of dissect that trip. And we got a couple other things here that we're going to talk about as well.
Including some questions.
Yep, some questions. What else, Charlie? Yeah, we're going to cover all that, and we got some announcements to make about the future of the podcast. And a couple first sale updates as well, too, that are coming very soon.
Right.
So we should start at the top. Arkansas trip wasn't our best trip.
No.
It was started out pretty hot.
Yeah, first two checks were very good.
Yep. And even though we weren't really seeing the sign, we were catching some stuff. There was nothing. There's no drop. If there was anything, it was pretty old.
Yeah, and we've mentioned that actually in the past where there was just no sign. I mean, that is not super unusual down there. And I don't really know what's changed because when we first started going down there was actually quite a bit of sign in terms of droppings on the road, that kind of thing. But not now, and there hasn't been for several years. So the ground's hard and rocky, and you got to be in certain areas to have enough mud to have a track show up. So it's not very unusual to actually see bobcat sign. But as far
especially bobcat,
right? But as far as coyote sign, I mean, you would expect to see some. We just weren't seeing any.
Yeah, I knew we'd be limited on how much cat sign we'd see, but I really thought we would find a lot more coyote droppings in the road than what we did, which was very little, if any. I can't recall a spot.
Yeah.
Do you recall a certain section that had?
Yeah, we saw a place that had two sets of coyote tracks, and we never caught one there.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
But what the turning point, like we said, the first few days was pretty good, and we were happy with it. And then it's kind of like the water about shut off on us.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that kind of went, that made any sense that happened was the weather change.
Right.
Then you factor in everything else that might be going on. That's about the only thing I can really comprehend why we weren't catching like we were. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like we have never trapped this area before.
Right.
So.
We got a long history with this. And usually it's kind of an ace in the hole. We know we can go down there and, have 7, 8, 6 check days that are going to be pretty reasonably good. So we only had 2 when you come right down to it. Justin's referring to the weather change. It got super mild. I mean, there was one evening we went to bed basically, and it was 71 degrees, and we got up in the morning first thing, 71 degrees still. So super mild. We've never gone this late before. We went basically included the last week of February. So, the weather was very mild. There were a few more people in the National Forest too. We had some issues with traps getting stolen, which we haven't had that realistically for a long time. which always makes you mad and kind of wonder what somebody's thinking when they do that. Obviously they have struggled with what's right and what's wrong and what's theirs and not theirs. So that was a little irritating to say the least. But I think generally it was just that weather change. It just got super mild. And it's been a mild winter anyways, other than that blast we had at 2 or 3 days at Christmas, but it's been mild anyways. Shoot, all the in the south and as clear south as Kentucky coming home. I mean, all the daffodils are blooming, the dogwoods are blooming. I mean, it was it seems like
Trapping in spring.
Yeah, it seems like it was April here basically, and I know that's further south, and that's that probably is more prone to be like that, but even people that we talked to in the past, that's it was definitely an early spring down there. So primeness wise, the bobcats were still in really good shape that we caught. Gray fox were just fine. Coyotes are going backwards. That's basically, if you get past mid-January, the coyotes got a really good chance of just not having much in the way of fur on them. They get super springy. So yeah, it's a difficult trip.
It was.
Or turned into a difficult trip. So.
Yep.
But,
having more people in the woods, just the general traffic alone stirring stuff up. I don't know if that just people driving through. There's people on mountain bikes, people running squirrel dogs. Recreation. It was beautiful out. People were getting out. It's public ground. It's just how it goes. So I don't know.
Right. I mean, there were still days that we really. I think there were still 3 days that we didn't see anybody. I mean, it was. It was still, in the scheme of things, pretty minimal. But there was definitely more activity there. But I think it was just all related to it was just so nice, and it was hard to sit at home for people when it was that nice out. So.
All right.
Can't blame them. That's what it's for. That's what it's there for. Just leave our traps alone.
Leave the traps alone. Please.
Yeah. So we had one place. I'm not sure what was going on here. We had one place where we always set 2 traps at a location. Never had to stop. And the traps were pulled out of the bed. They were still there, thank goodness. And somebody unrolled the trap tag, I guess, to see who it was. And then they took a knife or screwdriver or something, I don't know what, and scraped the pans on the trap. I thought there would be some sort of identification on it, I guess. I don't know. It was just weird. So we, against probably better judgment, we just went ahead and reset the traps, and there was no issue. From that point on, the traps stayed there. Whoever did that initially did not take the traps. Just one of those kind of bizarre things. And I think most states, that is actually illegal to do, including Arkansas. You cannot mess with somebody's traps. So technically that is a violation. So something like that. I'm just thankful that they left the traps and whatever.
That was before a few traps went missing. So if it would have been flipped, we might have pulled them.
Right.
Knowing,
right.
A couple were already stolen and these have been messed with. Maybe we should go ahead and take them.
Right.
But it worked out. So didn't catch anything there, but
no. I think last year we caught a bobcat there, but it was this year we did not. So
and that there's other trappers out and about. We found several.
We did.
Well, there were more flat sets than dirt holes, but you could see where trap beds were made, and someone was using peat moss. It was kind of neat to see, other people getting out and doing it.
We only saw one catch circle, though.
Yeah, only one where you could tell one of them caught something.
Yeah. And it's funny, when you find locations in the National Forest, basically all trappers that have a little bit of history with the location or have some experience, we're all generally choosing the same places to set, so it's like...
This guy didn't just start,
Yeah, he'd been at it a while.
Yeah, he's good.
I think we'd seen his sets in the past because it just looked pretty similar.
He's probably watching this right now.
Yeah, it might be.
Thanks for not stealing nothing.
He was already out of there, he'd already trapped.
So, yeah, you know, you take the good with the bad. You know, we had fun for what it was worth, but
Yeah.
we had a lot to do here too, so we knew we had to get back. One question that came to mind, and I ended up asking Charlie because I'd never really known how we came, like how did Charlie choose to start trapping Arkansas? Why did we pick there to begin with?
Right. I've talked about how to choose a state to go to, and Arkansas was kind of on my radar years ago. A guy named Dave Volan, big guy. He's no longer with us, but he had, and this is back in the 70s, him and a buddy went to Arkansas and camped in a tent in the mountains and set traps, and he had talked about that, and that was probably one of my, that obviously here it is 40 some years later, 50 years later, whatever, and I still remember that, or 40 some years later, I still remember him talking about that. So that was probably my original reason for looking at Arkansas. There was some other people over the years had kind of mentioned going down there, you read articles about it or whatever, but and there are trappers that go down there. So that was probably the original. And then I got to looking at the laws, and it's a trapper friendly state. I mean, they allow trapping on most public ground, most WMAs. So it was trap size restrictions were within what we already used. That was all good. So basically once we got down there, then, and we've told this story before, we just kind of had to figure out where we were going to go. So what made the most sense, what had the best access in terms of driving, and as far as covering ground, that kind of thing, where you didn't have to walk a lot. Because, walking's fine, but you can't cover a lot of ground, and you can't be efficient, and you can't move to different areas of different animals if you're walking. So, if you walk a mile and you set traps, you're still trapping the same animals. You're essentially trapping against yourself. So you want to try to avoid doing that. So for those of you that are not familiar with Arkansas, it's basically the western half is kind of mountains. They call them mountains. Get the Ouachita Mountain Range, that kind of thing. And then the eastern half is all flat delta ground, or flat farm ground, delta ground. So it is, they have
a lot of flooding off from the Mississippi hits the crop fields, and
right. So they grow a lot of cotton, they grow, rice, that kind of thing there.
Great duck hunting.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, for those of you that are familiar with Indiana, we have southern Indiana, we have northern Indiana, which is definitely two different, significant different geography. Probably even more different in Arkansas in terms of western half versus eastern half. But
yeah,
so that's kind of how that came about. That
you got the Ozarks that trickle in from the north.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's a pretty diverse state, really.
Yeah, it's a pretty state.
It's a great state.
Definitely a hunting state, trapping state, fishing state. So got a little bit of everything. So yeah, Dave Olin was one that originally sparked my interest in that. So he was kind of a talker, and for those of you that remember him and knew him, and in latter years he wasn't able to do much, but he was always a trapper and always loved trapping. That's for sure. So
yeah, the funny thing is, you mentioned that being that long ago. I remember him when I first started coming around. He was very involved with Chapter 7B, Fur Takers of America, and that's when I started kind of getting involved. So I remember him, and maybe he was probably around about 5 years or so before he passed away.
Yeah.
That's the short time that I remember of him, but good story.
Yep.
What else we got on the list here?
So we've had some questions. We had somebody ask about, I guess on the last video that we put up, it was the season finale. I snapped a 550 off at the end, and the guy thought it looked like it was getting weak. That maybe he thought it was too slow. I'm not really. And he was asking about when to change springs and add springs and whatever on 550s, and we got 550s at this point now that are over 10 years old, and they've never had any additional springs added or springs swapped out. And I'm sure that if you compare it with a new 550, that they have lost some strength, but they are still plenty strong. I think the idea of the 4-coil trap is used way too often. I don't think most traps ever need to be 4-coiled. if the trap weakens up, some guys use the excuse, well, I needed to get through frozen ground or whatever, and it's like, well, if you're using proper antifreeze or whatever, you still shouldn't need that. So generally on BMPs, the best management practices for quill traps are not within the guidelines. So yeah, I think I'd probably go by comparing it to a new trap, comparing it to just generally how it feels. If you take a 550 and compare it to, say, a number 2 Bridger, the number 2 Bridger new is definitely not as strong as that 550 to begin with. And my guess is after you've used the 550s for several years, you're probably still stronger than a number 2 Bridger. So, so I guess I wouldn't get too excited about, certainly not changing out springs, and then as far as adding the 4 coil springs, I don't know that I would get too excited about doing that. So if you put 4 coil springs on a 550, I mean, I can't even set it. It's like, if I can't set it with my hands, I'm not interested in setting it. If you need setters and you are not having physical issues with your hands or whatever, and you need setters, then it's too strong. So just if you're accustomed to setting traps, just not willing to. You don't need it. The animal doesn't need it either. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. So
right there with you. Plus, it also helps if you pinch yourself. That lessens the blow a little bit too.
Yeah. So.
Another question that gets brought up: exposed bait laws. Different states have different laws about how your bait is, whether it's exposed or not. The reason for that is probably because of birds of prey, right?
Generally, yeah.
So you don't accidentally catch a hawk or something.
Or God forbid an eagle or whatever.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure stranger, crazy things happen.
It's
So yeah, definitely. I mean, in Arkansas, you gotta cover it up. There's nothing's out. So deep dirt holes. If we can't get our dirt holes in, we'll usually put a rock over our bait. They'll smell it. I mean, yeah, and you brought up too. What kind of debate could you have with someone's lure being exposed?
right.
Even though most of it kind of evaporates or doesn't. But it's still visible. You can see where a wet mark was or whatever. Like where we draw the line here.
Right. So it's not a ball of meat. So I guess that's kind of where that's at. But states that have the exposed bait law, a lot of times they don't allow any type of natural flagging for bobcats. In other words, you can't use a turkey wing or feathers or whatever. That if you are going to use flagging, it's got to be synthetic, like Christmas tinsel or whatever. You've all seen the different variations of bobcat flagging.
Those boa feathers that are fake.
Yeah. We never flag on bobcats.
Very rare.
Especially in the national forest, because it's just like, well, here's my trap. We're already got enough issues with that we did this year, so we don't really need to flag and tell the public where our trap is. Cat's coming by and he's going to want to work your set. Typically, they're going to work your set. The flagging is going to help in some instances get them from further away, maybe to get to your set. But if you can do it, great. If you can't, then you can still catch bobcats without flagging.
Oh sure. Yeah, definitely.
Sure. So
yeah, I'm kind of on the. I'd rather not, because we're on our trips and we have a shortened window of what time frame we're there. We need to catch everything that we can, and some of that flagging and all that stuff gets kind of chaotic, and that surely can scare away some coyotes or whatnot. So I don't want to limit our catch. Right. So just like you said, just a regular dirt hole has caught us plenty of bobcats in the past.
Right. Or even the flat sets. So
yeah, flat sets.
When we were in Texas a month ago, we were there to help protect the heifers from the coyotes, and so our perspective was coyotes, even though we did catch bobcats. But we didn't want to generally mess up any chances of catching a coyote with gaudy flagging. So
Right.
we kind of stayed away from it. So the exposed bay kind of goes back to, if you want to take that a little bit further, setting on a big bait. Say you've got a deer carcass out in the field. In the case of Texas, we had some dead cows that we could work off of. You still, on those, you set downwind from them, and then set off of those, and you'll still catch the coyotes. We had a bait that we set up in Texas, in fact, and we were probably at least 7 or 8 yards from the big bait itself.
Some of them.
Some of them were probably 20
Yeah.
yards away, and basically all of them connected. So, those giant bait stations just get those coyotes in the area. But if you do set directly on the bait, your chances of catching non-targets are definitely greater. So, particularly in terms of raptors and crows and
Yeah.
buzzards, maybe if they're around. So
Yep.
yeah. So there's not. You just keep your bait covered up. That's the big thing. Like Justin said, very deep dirt holes, cover with the rock. They'll still smell it. So
Yeah.
you should dig a deep. You should dig a deep dirt hole anyways if you can.
Yeah. And if you can't, and it happens to be fairly shallow, but enough of a hole to work with, we usually cover it up with some water, dried grass or whatever, because it definitely has that appeal. It sinks in, and they're gonna have to work for your bait even harder. So the more you got them working, the more chances you're gonna have of them actually stepping on the pan.
Right.
So, what else we got here on the agenda? Offset and closed-jawed traps.
So we had an email. A guy was asking about, say, hey, I noticed you guys only offer the MB 550s in an offset. Everything I've got is closed jaw. Is there, what's the pros or whatever? For one thing, generally closed jaw traps just plain don't sell. I mean, everybody's pretty much on the page of using offset jaw trapped, particularly on anything that we sell on land for coyotes, foxes, bobcats. The offset jaw with the rounded cast jaws or the laminated jaws, basically it's of course animal friendly. It meets the BMP guidelines. It also gives you the versatility. So if you catch a raccoon or you catch a coyote in the MB 550, you're going to hold both of them. The trap's not. I mean, I wouldn't intentionally set a 550 for a raccoon if I was running a raccoon line, but it's fine to use. It will give you that widespread animal size for that trap. I think it's, as I've said before, there's no perfect trap, but it's probably the closest thing that we've come to being the best ideal trap is 550. So it's close to being, for us, it's ideal of anything that's out there. And there's a lot of people that'll be on that same page, I think. But when you have a closed jaw trap, your chances of some foot issues increases significantly. And when you have that issue, you have a chance of losing that animal. So anything to avoid that is good. So obviously we're an advocate of a offset jaw trap, and most trappers are. Like I said, as far as by what we ship out of here and what we sell locally, very few people, 1 3/4 or bigger buy a closed jaw. It's a thing in the past. So
yeah, and I mean you're not just saying that off of somebody coming in here in the shop talking about it. The BMP, these studies have been done that the closed jaw traps do cause more damage or possible issues to where they could get away. So you want to hold that animal the best you can. So that alone would tell me. No, I'm not really sure how they do those studies. I remember hearing it at the Trappers College, but I couldn't tell you all the details, so I'm not going to sit here and and say it like I know, but obviously they just did numerous set testings and just compared the numbers.
Right.
And they actually, I know they went in and checked.
They skinned the foot out.
They skinned the foot, check out for bruising, check ligaments. They do all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty in depth, and for them to come up with that, I forget what the percentage was, but it was pretty significant.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a significant study. So,
offset traps are good
right
for us. That's what we use.
Right. And 4-coil traps generally did not make the cut on the BMPs. So generally, it's offset jaw, 2-spring, laminated, and you're in pretty good shape. That's kind of just in a nutshell. There's more detail to it than that. So
yeah,
but,
I mean, you could take it to another level and talk about, okay, what about double jaw traps that don't have an offset?
Right. That's right.
I'm sure those are still better than just regular because there's more surface area.
Right. The idea of the double jaws was basically they were available in a number 11 and some number 1.5 coils. And coons are really the only animal that likes to chew on their feet. I mean, bottom line. So the trap basically, it cuts the circulation off, and so they'll work on their feet sometimes. Well, like coons is pretty common. So the idea of the double jaw is it makes that area below the jaws much smaller, so they can't get in there and do that. And that's the idea of the double jaw. So, yeah, in the smaller traps, 1.5s, number 11s, that kind of thing. Rarely are those sold in an offset jaw. They're primarily closed jaw. They're small traps, and they're and a lot of them on the better number 11s. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say better. On a lot of the number 11s, the first choice was the double jaw. So
yeah,
that's a small jaw trap, anyways. So
right.
I've caught a lot of coons in number 11s in the double jaw, and you take them out of the trap, and they don't even look like they've ever. I mean, they're not even a crease. I mean, it's amazing that trap how just basically it's just holding the animal, and that number 11 actually was used for catching the otters in I think. I always get it mixed up. Mississippi, Louisiana.
I'm pretty sure it was Mississippi.
Yeah, that came up here to be released in Indiana. So those were all originally caught in number 11 long springs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly you couldn't catch them in a 220 body trap, which a lot of people use for otter because they're going to kill them. So they wanted them for relocation, and that number 11 fit the bill perfectly.
Yeah.
So it's a good, strong, powerful trap, and it's very small.
Yeah. Very little foot damage, too.
So,
and that's great, to hold a giant animal like that. Because they're just a muscle. A river otter is just a muscle. And that little trap, it's a lot tougher than what people think, I bet.
Right. A lot of people on the offset jaws are concerned that maybe a raccoon will get out. And, I mean, you're going to hold the vast majority of raccoons with an offset jaw. Now, like I said, if you were specifically setting a raccoon line, you probably wouldn't set an offset jaw, but you're going to use like a 1.5 or smaller trap anyways. So, but... I mean, if you caught a raccoon there on a front foot and you caught him like really down low on the toes, yeah, he might get out. That's very possible. But if you have any type of pad catch or whatever, he's not going anywhere. They just it'll hold him. So
right.
And mentioning that, so sometimes you have a small catch circle, maybe not a huge torn up area, but there has been some bit of a struggle, and there's the trap's of course fired off, nothing in it, and a lot of times that is caused by animals actually just rolling on your set, and you've caught some back fur or belly fur or whatever, and they're in there for enough to cause some disturbance, but they're not in there long enough to really create a catch circle. So a lot of times that'll happen. So that, I think sometimes that gets blamed on catching coons down really low, but more often than not, you're just not catching them by the foot.
Right. Well,
excuse me.
So we covered the Arkansas trip, answered a handful of questions here. We do need to bring up a couple things before we sign off, we have our photo contest that we do every year. It's coming to an end very soon.
Yep. Show us your bottle photo contest. Need to get those photos in. March 15th is the deadline.
16th. Or 15th for a deadline. We're going to draw them the very next day, the 16th.
Right.
So, yeah, all the details and everything are on the homepage of the website. There's a link there directly. Submit your photos. Either deer hunting, trapping. Show us your bottle. Simple as that.
Yep. Show us the bottle you had the success with. So, all like Justin said, all the details are on the website. So, who'syourtrappersupply.com. I think that's it on that. So.
Yeah. Then I know if you're watching this the day it comes out, being a Friday, March 4th and 5th, we got 2 things going on as far as locally as far as selling fur. Saturday, March 4th, down in Columbus, Indiana, at the fairgrounds, we have our fur sale. We do it every year through Fur Takers of America, Chapter 7B. Sale's going to start about 9:30. We'll have the doors and stuff open about 8:30. Sign in, get a lot number, that sort of thing, and sell your fur.
Yeah.
Then, if that option doesn't work for you, the very next day you can come here. Who's Your Trapper Supply on Sunday? What time's that? From 10 to 11?
10 to 11.
Yep. Groenewald's going to be here out in the parking lot, and you just come pick up picking up whatever.
Right. Oh no, we should check the date at some point. Fur Harvesters Auction Company will be picking up here as well, and I think that's in April. But just check Fur Harvesters website, and they have it listed on there as when they will be here to pick up fur. Now that's consignment to the auction. That there will be no checks written then. That just is going straight to the auction. So
yeah. Now the stuff for the 4th and 5th, you'll get a check that day.
Right.
So,
right. So
just kind of however you want to play it.
Right. And for those of you that are not local, which most of you are not, and we realize that, check the Groenewald Fur website. They'll have all their route information listed on that, and they're really after beaver, bobcat, and otter. So, and I think they're starting to buy some other stuff too. They're a little more interested in some of the other stuff, the way it looks. So check their website out for route details, and they run fairly late into the spring in some cases. So definitely check that out. Check your state associations out. A lot of them are having their fur sales now. Mm-hmm. So definitely check that out. That's another option to sell fur. And then, of course, Fur Harvesters for consignment to put it on the auction. So the auction situation is definitely better now than it was a year ago, even as far as COVID restrictions going into Canada, that kind of thing. So things are getting back to normal in that respect. So
good. Yeah.
But so that's about it for that. And then
what else is there? We got moving forward, we're going to take a little time off from the podcast so we can get some other stuff done. This summer, be on the lookout. We're going to have some conversations with some people involved with the Fur Takers and the National Trappers Associations. Talk about the convention and what's going on, what to look forward to at those conventions.
Just for Fur Takers of America convention will be in Wisconsin. You can check their website out for the details. And then the National Trappers Association convention is going to be in July, towards the end of July, and it will be in Escanaba, Michigan. Both good fun conventions, both good fun states. I wish they weren't side by side, but there's no way to control that. It'd be nice if one was in the east and one was in the west, or not far. Anyways, not next to each other. But anyways, so
yeah. Well, it'll be fun regardless, but
and we're looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing everybody. So
yeah, we got some other guests lined up. We won't reveal them quite yet, but we'll have those in our bag. And once we start releasing more podcasts, So just make sure you follow us on all social media, and you'll be updated. So
Right. And if for those of you that have not, if you get on our website, you can sign up for our email newsletter. So whenever a podcast comes out or a show comes out, or which is usually every Friday, there's something. August through the end of February, early March, we'll send an email newsletter out, and that'll give you a reminder that there's a podcast out or a show that comes out, and then along with some products or some other information or whatever. So, and that's a freebie, and we won't bother you too much. Maybe once a week during the season. So,
yeah, that's it.
all right,
We'll catch you next time.
appreciate everybody following us along.